What is happening, everybody? How the hell y'all making it? Today's guest is Andrew Gormley, formerly of Rorschach, Kiss It Goodbye, Shai Hulud, Playing Enemy, and more. Andrew and I caught up to talk about his history with the aforementioned bands, the crazy experience of playing with Today Is the Day, with minimal rehearsal, I might add. Seen impactful shows as a child in New York, and a whole lot more. So hope y'all dig it. Crash Bang Boom Podcast can be found on my SoundCloud and YouTube pages, as well as iTunes Podcasts, Google Play, Podbean, Stitcher, Luminary, and more. Check out my Facebook and Instagram pages for additional content and or updates. Please give me a like, a follow, etc., or, whatever is as easy as clicking a button. The support is appreciated. Shout out to my sponsor, New Orleans Record Press, who's pressing the hell out of some records presently, has a quicker turnaround than most in the industry, and can help you from everything with design to mastering, electroplating, vinyl coloring options, packaging, and more. They even got that handy little real-time quote generator to keep tabs on all your options. Vinyl sounds damn good. It even smells good. So hit them up, and that's New Orleans Record Press. And by the way, anybody else grew up in the 80s, just smelling the records when you first got them? They smelled glorious. I don't know if those chemicals or paper or whatever the hell it was, but it was fantastic. Lastly, during these tough COVID times in which we find ourselves, keep your eyes and ears peeled for artists offering online lessons, master classes, workshops, and more. As touring musicians are in a precarious place and everybody using streaming services that don't pay artists shit while they rake in billions, well, I suppose maybe you want to throw some at the actual artists who create the stuff that you love. Buy from the artists' websites, Bandcamps, and even iTunes if you can. And keep in mind fundraisers, charities, GoFundMes, as well as websites like Save Our Stages, who are looking to save national independent music venues that are feeling the burden in these extremely tough times. We got to get this shit back at some point. So here we go. Andrew Gormley, Crash, Bang, Boom.
Crowds go mad with joy.
Yeah! All right, Andrew Gormley, what's happening, man? How are you doing? I believe you are out in the Washington State area. I'm a fan of that state. I went for my first time recently, maybe about 3 years ago, and I absolutely loved it. And man, the parks, the wildlife, everything about it, that state is beautiful. So congrats on living in an awesome state that you now live. At least I think it's awesome.
Yeah, Jody. Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Yeah, love it here. I moved here from New Jersey in 1996, and I needed a change when I moved here in that time. I didn't like New Jersey. I moved to Seattle. Loved living in Seattle. It's so much different. And since I've lived here over the last 20-something years, I've really grown to appreciate so much about it. And now that we're in COVID, we've been doing a bunch of trips, long weekend trips to just different parts of the state. Yeah. It's incredible. We went to the beach, to the Pacific coast, and we love going there, going to the woods, going to the mountains. Yeah. We have desert, so we've really been enjoying the state, and over the years. And we have a big fucking giant volcano, Mount Rainier, that just overlooks our city and just reminds us every day.
Yeah, right.
That if that thing explodes, it's going to be pretty crazy. But yeah, love it.
Yeah, I went to when we were out there. I was only out there for a few days, and we did a little drive out to Leavenworth, that little strange little Bavarian town, kind of out in the mountains. And there's an amazing drive that goes there. We were hitting swimming holes, and the water was freezing, but it was like nature's cryotherapy dips along the way. And then there's good wine there, and like you said, the geographical diversity of the Seattle and Washington State area is so incredible. I remember I went to the west side of Seattle, and I was on a beach, but I could see mountains, and that for someone who's from Louisiana, where it's all flat and you don't see mountains, and you got to go to Florida to get to the nearest beach. It was incredible. I was really just, again, really blown away, and I just absolutely love that Northwest area. It's so incredible.
Yeah. Just real quick, at the end of June, we did a bunch of these trips. End of June, we went up into the mountains, did a hike. It was June 29th. And we were hiking in snow. We were up high enough. We were in a pass in the Cascade Mountains, and
unbelievable.
It was a beautiful day. But we're hiking in snow in end of June in the mountains, and it's 80 degrees in Seattle.
Wow, unbelievable. Well, what have you been doing with this the COVID times in which we find ourselves? I noticed one, you just had a birthday. Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, as did I. I think you're just a little bit later, so I guess that would make you Leo, is it?
Yeah. I'm 50 years old. Heavy metal drummer making it to 50 years. I made it farther than I thought. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. Happy 50th. That's a big one for sure.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about some of these playthrough videos that you've been doing with some friends, some lockdown videos. I noticed y'all did some Ozzy songs. I saw y'all did No More Tears. You had a guy ripping some Zakk Wylde solos. It seemed like a fun time.
So, I mean, COVID lockdown sucks for everyone, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, and thankfully, you know, I know a lot of people are having a really hard time right now. Thankfully, my wife and I haven't lost our jobs. We're still working and from home.
Yeah.
You know, so everything's good. But, you know, I've been able to, you know, to make these videos. I have my friend Dave Webb who plays the guitar on some of these videos. And yeah, I played with some, like we did a little local band called Space Bag, that's kind of like a grind, like prog instrumental band that we did together a few years back. And you know, Dave is just an incredible guitar player. I mean, he's super precise, and he was like, "Hey, we just tried one out. We did a Rainbow song. We just did it to a click each of our tracks.
Yep.
And just busted it out. Like, yeah, let's do this. We can." And I was very inspired by Charlie Benante's videos. He was doing he's been doing a bunch of Rush and he did some SOD and stuff. But I love those videos. I mean, that's the best thing we have right now. That's the closest thing we can have to live music.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck, I could do that. I could play these songs. I've done audio engineering in the past. Dave's good at video editing, so we ended up doing a Sepultura Refuse Resist protest video in support of the protests that were happening in Seattle. So you know, like just we actually did the No More Tears song before that, but we didn't feel that it was the right time to release it, and instead we did that protest video instead. We thought that was more appropriate.
Yeah, those seem like fun, man. I've edited some for my buddy as well, so I totally get it. That's where we're at until venues and live music come back, and as we all know, that's going to be the last one, sadly. So it's a precarious state of affairs that we find ourselves in here. It's unfortunate, man.
Yeah, and I got to make a shout out to like the 2 minutes of late night videos. They've been killing it.
Totally.
They just did the anthem video they put out last week, and that was insane.
Absolutely. That's good stuff for sure, man. Well, man, Here we are. You said obviously you just had a 50th birthday, and going back to 1990, you know, one of your early bands, Rorschach, and a band that is referenced a good bit amongst the sort of hardcore, post-hardcore movement that would happen, you know, in the late 90s with many of the bands that I was kind of hipped to around that time, you know, and Dillinger and Botch and Coalesce and Nut and all of those really cool bands around that time. Take me back some 30-odd years ago when you're a late teenager or 20 years old playing in this band in New Jersey. Tell me a little bit about, I guess, you know, just that band. Was there a scene? Did you feel that there were bands out there that were contemporaries? And what did you feel were maybe some of the influences for that band going into it? Because even in revisiting it to this day, it is intense. That is some intense-ass music.
Yeah, I mean, the band Rorschach started off... there was just a couple of like these other hardcore bands that you know we were in that just disbanded, and kind of we came together like with a couple of the members of these other bands. Nick, the guitar player, and I went to school together, and we played in a hardcore band. And Charles and Keith played in some other hardcore band, and there was a hardcore club. Maybe they weren't just hardcore, but called the Anthrax in Connecticut. And I would go with Nick up there, and you know, I think Nick made friends with Charles and Keith, and they started up what ended up being Rorschach. And they didn't have a drummer; they had somebody just filling in. And Nick says, "Yeah, I played with Andrew. Maybe Andrew can fill in for a little bit." And I wasn't really into being in just a straight up metal band, hardcore band, since I was more of a metal guy. And Keith had more of a metal aesthetic to his playing. We started off kind of as a hardcore band. We had some early demos that were pretty like chugga chugga,
right,
you know, breakdowns and stuff. But you know, I think when we started writing our first LP, there was kind of like halfway through the writing of that, there was kind of that moment when Keith showed up with some riffs that were nothing like we've heard before. And you know, Keith was influenced by everything from Kiss to like Celtic Frost and Voivod. and look, a lot of hardcore too. So he those riffs came from all his different influences,
right?
And and Slayer too. I mean, Slayer was in that mix. They were one of his favorite bands, probably still is, and just put out that all together, and what came out of that was this kind of weird hybrid of metal and hardcore.
Right.
And when we started, there really wasn't much of a scene. We were in North New Jersey, and there really wasn't much in North New Jersey, but we started playing shows in New York, and we ended up playing a lot at ABC No Rio, which was
right.
For our genre was the right place to play. And we started playing with Citizens Arrest and Hell No and Born Against. And those were the bands that we were playing a lot with. We were doing a lot of weekend shows. We ended up doing also a bunch of shows a little bit later on with Ass Suck as well, which was kind of a weird combination. But we met them on tour in Florida.
Wow.
And we had a little bit of bond with them. So we ended up doing like a long weekend tour with them as well.
Wow.
But back to ABC No Rio, we ended up. Sam Cedars had like his own label that we ended up putting our first LP out on today, and we did an amazing 11.5 week long U.S. tour with Born Against.
Wow.
Just across the United States, and it was just crazy. The five of us Rorschach in a van together for 11.5 weeks, and being on tour with Born Against was just. It was crazy then, and when I think back to it now, it's crazy that we did that.
Were there any particular show that you look back on and just think, what the fuck was going on? Because I really love talking to bands that are kind of on the forefront of some of these subgenres that inevitably develop. And when you're kind of at the forefront of it, you end up playing sometimes great shows, also some admittedly fucked up shows for a myriad reasons. Everything from it just being crazy venue, crazy crowd, all kinds of strange stuff. Are there any particular shows that did you just scratch your head thinking that was just insane?
There wasn't a lot of bands touring at that time, so we would just be on bills with random bands, Screeching Weasel. Wow. Like in Chicago, we played with Screeching Weasel, and when we played in England, we played with No Effects.
Wow!
And like there would be these a lot of the shows. No Use for a Name we played with in Czechoslovakia, right?
Wow.
So it was just a lot of these whatever bands were touring, we just get put on shows together when you're doing these tours. But when we played New Jersey, a little later on in Rorschach, before we broke up, we played like Middlesex Community College in New Jersey, which was a big place to play, and that was a real awesome show to play. And these shows that towards the end of Rorschach's career, we were playing a lot of up to that point, a lot of like $5 all ages shows, and there wasn't a whole lot of places to play. And then we started branching out and playing more like over 21, higher priced, door priced shows. And there was a lot of internal politics in the band that kind of led to the breakup of the band. But we wanted to branch out to these bigger shows, and that would have been better for the band. And we should have been playing places like Wetlands and CBGB. And just because of the internal politics with the band, not wanting over 21 shows, and there was a lot of pushback from certain members in the band to not do those shows.
Right.
So that kind of led to the demise. We could have branched out a lot more, and we kind of shot ourselves in the foot.
Wow. I mean, it's kind of amazing given, again, the sort of micro genre that I think it was operating in, that y'all were able to even get to Europe and do some of that stuff. So, I mean, that's fairly impressive, I feel like, actually.
Yeah. I think, again, like Born Against kind of paved the way for us. They toured Europe the year before. And because we're on the label with Vermiform Records, I think that kind of opened up the door for us to get on over to Europe. Again, at that time, there just wasn't a whole lot of bands touring Europe, especially like American bands.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting time.
Wow. Were there any particular shows for you growing up, either going into the city, which is what it sounded like, where maybe, you saw any particular band or drummer, nationally, locally, et cetera, attracted you that much more to like heavier music?
Definitely like the heavier, like Nuclear Assault, like around that age. There was a club in Brooklyn called L'Amour's.
Of course, yeah.
And like just going to L'Amour's, like all the time we could drive into the city and go see bands there.
Yeah.
The Ritz in New York City as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there was one show that was insane. Was Faith No More opening up for Voivod, and
Wow.
Soundgarden opened up for Faith No More. So Soundgarden, Faith No More, and Voivod.
I heard about this show. Yeah.
That was great. That was awesome. That was such a good show.
Unbelievable, man.
Yeah, I think that was right around the time like we were playing the Rorschach. Like Nothing Face came out, and it was like nothing I ever heard before.
To this day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a clean, well executed record. Everything just sounded so precise and
Yeah.
well produced. Like even though it was like this crazy prog thrash weird record, like the vocals are just well done. A lot of like harmonies and all kinds of crazy stuff. Like
Totally.
Loved it. Like that right there was such an influence for me and for like drumming and music from that time on.
Yeah, it's funny. I talked to the drummer of Voivod, who I'm a fan of, and I'm total Voivod head myself, and it was really trippy talking to him and kind of reliving how I came across Voivod, which was a VHS tape that was like a compilation VHS tape. And they had a video for one of the songs. It was actually one of the songs off of Dimension Hatros. It might have been like Cosmic Vacuum or something. And I was just like, who the hell is this band? And then, and I mean, Dimension Hatros is 88. So then Nothing Face is 89 1 year later. I mean, they were just dropping records pretty much every year. And then, Nothing Face came out. And as you said, I just remember hearing that and thinking that I had never heard anything like that. I think there was no precedent for how just completely interesting. And again, the production on it, thankfully. And I mean, even listening to it today, I'm like, man, this record still sounds awesome. I love it. It's so goddamn good.
Yeah. It was funny when we were driven to the airport to go to tour Europe with Rorschach, and it was Slint Spiderland. And Slint Spiderland and Souls of Zero Neurosis were like the two records we listened to over and over again in that van in Europe. So those were also like huge influence, and like Melvins.
Right.
That was, listening to Melvins was awesome.
100%.
They were so good.
Absolutely. I mean, that's, I think, one of the game changers for the Melvins. I believe it was 87. It was Gluey Porch Treatments came out, and then you had Ozma around the same time. And those are undeniably, I mean, when I see doom bands, I see just all kinds of bands heavy that play in this sort of heavy realm. The connection to the Melvins or Neurosis, who also put out, I think, their first record in 87 as well. The connection there is undeniable. That influence is really undeniable. The Melvins especially, it's just like how they permeated so many bands. It's incredible, really.
Yeah.
I tell you, another bizarre instance of Rorschach is the use of I guess it was Pavlov's dog in the Zero Dark 30 torture scene in that movie. Did you get word that one of those songs was going to be featured in the movie beforehand, or did the movie come out and you're like, oh shit, okay, gotcha?
No. There was some, somebody who was working on like the music for the movie, like suggested they use our song. And they contacted us, and the Charles Singer of Rorschach, he actually re-released all that music, so it's all on his label now. So he made the deal to have the song, and we all agreed to it. We love to have it in there.
Right on. Question about the Protestant record from Rorschach. That one sounds like, I think at least from a production standpoint, that was a turn of events, in comparison to the first release. And one of the only bands that I feel like kind of sounded like that also put out a record that year in '93, and Today Is the Day. They put out Supernova. And I'm just curious, I guess, were y'all aware of Today Is the Day? Or was there anything that influenced that record in particular?
I don't think anybody in Rorschach at the time had heard of Today's the Day before we recorded Protestant. I don't think that was on our radar at all. Yeah. Soon after that, yes, we were, big Today's the Day fans, but Protestant was actually recorded just like a week after we got back from our Europe tour.
Gotcha.
And like we showed up, we felt like we wrote a lot of songs before, and since as soon as this new song was written, we start playing it in our set, and we felt that was the time to capture that those songs right when we finished up that tour.
Yeah.
Have that live feel and get right in there and record them.
Interesting, man. Well, in the early 90s, I guess post Rorschach, you did, what was it? You were in Die 116, or was it 11-6, or how did y'all pronounce that? Just Die 116?
Die 116 is
Die
how
116.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That was Gavin Van Black's band from Burn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, the funny thing about that was Keith basically was the one. He left Rorschach. Rorschach's done. He says, Andrew, we're joining a new band. Come on.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'm in Die 116. And Keith's time in Die 116 was short lived. He quit and joined that guy real early on in my time with Die 116. I don't fault Keith for quitting Die 116. That wasn't a good fit for him.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was hoping that I would leave Die 116 with him and we could try our hands in a different band. But we kind of got back together with Kiss Goodbye later on, so I guess that all kind of worked out in the end.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of Kiss It Goodbye, I just spoke to Dave Rosenberg of Dead Guy, and I'll be putting that episode out. By the time this one airs, it would have already been out. It was interesting talking to him as well as to sort of the shows they were playing and how they were fitting in and who they were playing with, et cetera. And then, you end up with a couple of members out in Seattle. To my understanding, you're a Jersey guy. How did you end up in Seattle and end up doing Kiss It Goodbye in the first place?
Yeah, Kiss It Goodbye started in New Jersey. So
okay.
Let's just make that very clear.
Right.
But when I joined Kiss It Goodbye, it was made clear that members of that band were moving to Seattle.
Okay.
So, okay, that's fine. When I was touring, in Rorschach and Die 116, I went to enough places that I was more than happy to get the fuck away from New Jersey.
Yeah.
New Jersey to me was just, a guy with long hair who didn't work in, have a here in New York City. I didn't fit in at all. So I was more than happy to get the fuck away from New Jersey.
So Kiss It Goodbye moves out to the peace and serenity of the Northwest coast that is Seattle from the intensity of the Northeast coast. Was it hard acclimating to that and the completely different vibe of the Northwest coast coming from the Northeast coast?
For me personally, it was definitely a culture shock going to Seattle from New Jersey. But, Seattle has a very cold, there's like the Seattle freeze, where people just kind of have their own bubble and they don't want to really interact. People are polite enough, but it took a little bit to get used to that. Band-wise, though, we left New Jersey, and when we were playing in the Northeast, we were playing big shows in Boston at the Rat, and we had like a send-off show at CBGB, and these were awesome, huge, great shows. And when we got to Seattle, playing some local shows, it wasn't the same at all. We played the Velvet Elvis was like an all ages club. It was just like a theater, and that it was a great place, and it had its own scene, but it was definitely a way different scene. Not as like into aggressive music as New York and Boston and the Northeast.
I bet.
I'm not going to say we didn't go over well. We didn't go over well, but it was definitely a different reaction than we were used to. I think it's also a younger scene, maybe just a little bit not as mature scene. And when I think back at it, like a lot of that scene, who came out of that scene was like Minus the Bear,
right.
These Aren't Your Snakes, Himsa, all these bands that came out of that earlier scene.
Right.
But I think Kiss Goodbye, by the time we got to Seattle, we had our record label already figured out. We were on a mission to record She Loves Me Not. And that was really our focus. And, I think we kind of viewed ourselves, okay, well, maybe Seattle, same reaction, but we're going to go on tour. And that is going to be what we do. We're not going to worry so much about playing locally. And funny thing, too, is we played Seattle, and we played 2 shows with the Unsane on that tour, one over 21 and one all ages. And neither show was well attended, which was kind of weird for and Kiss Goodbye. And that the one show that we played in, the all ages show, like, promoter said, you guys are a local band. go get your own food. We're like, okay, great.
Right.
We're on tour. We just happen to be passing through the city. I guess we'll just go home and if we have homes and figure it out there.
Yeah.
But I think if Kiss Goodbye stayed together longer, I think the scene or us would have changed a little bit with what was going on in Seattle.
Right. Well, in doing Kiss It Goodbye and given the shared members that are obviously came from Dead Guy, was there pressure at all in sort of matching the intensity? Obviously you have Tim Singer, the vocalist, so you have that shared component, and he brings his own intensity. But as a band, instrumentally, did you feel as though you needed to match sort of that intensity? Was there pressure at all? Was there anything like that?
I didn't feel any pressure at all to match the intensity. I feel that, Keith Huckins, I already played with Keith Huckins. I knew what kind of intensity he had. I know what kind of intensity Tom Rusnak brought.
Mm-hmm.
And, you just hear Tim and Tim is that intensity. It's
right.
That was never a concern. There was some, not for me, but there was definitely some competitiveness going on. I've heard some stories about people, heckling Dead Guy, and I think maybe in our band, some of the members were kind of happy about that, and they were definitely excited about the competitiveness and people taking sides. But look, I thought Dead Guy with Tim and Keith was a great band. I benefited them from them leaving that band, but I understand later on why they left. But before I joined up with Keith and formed Kiss Goodbye with Tim and Keith and Tom, I thought like it wasn't the best idea for them to quit.
Gotcha. Were there any bands that y'all were playing with that you felt were kind of on the same wavelength as that band, or were y'all kind of oddballs again, or how did that work?
Here's a weird thing that happened. Neurosis were playing Seattle, and Charlie from Bloodlet says, "Hey, Kiss Goodbye, we want you guys to play the show with us. Neurosis is kind of strict about the time and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Use our equipment and you guys can play a couple of songs."
Mm-hmm.
So we did this. We just showed up with our guitars. Like we just walked in the crowd with our guitars, walked up on stage when Bloodlet was done, got on stage and just started playing in front of right before Neurosis.
Wow.
And it was awesome. It was really cool. We just played like two songs, like Ammunition and one other song.
Mm-hmm.
And it was loved it. It just went over real big, and there was a big crowd. They were really pumped. And we go backstage, and Neurosis was like, "What the fuck are you people think you're fucking doing?"
Oh no!
Like, whoa, yeah. Like we didn't have sign off from Neurosis to play that show,
right?
And the drummer especially was just fucking pissed.
Oh,
and I've heard rumblings, over the years that he just never let that go. Neurosis ended up touring with Pantera slightly after that. Like I was their next door,
mm-hmm.
and the drummer's like, we're not going to bring up our friends band to play with us in front of Pantera. Like, oh fuck, yeah.
Right. Oh shit, still salty. Oh well. I mean, it sounds like y'all had a good time, and given the small window that Kiss It Goodbye was operating in, I mean, was that maybe two and a half? It was no more than 3 years, really, right?
Yeah, I mean, we moved out in 1996, and we did a tour with The Unsane, and we did a tour with Obituary in 1997. We got kicked off the tour with Obituary.
Why'd y'all get kicked off the tour?
That's a great question, and that was just such a horrible experience. That was just the worst worst experience I've had touring in my entire life.
Really?
Yeah, it was the worst. We drove from Seattle to North Carolina to start this tour with Obituary. And again, this was pre-internet, where like someone faxes over you some sheets of where you're going to show up and when you're going to play.
Yeah,
and right before the tour, and there's only 2 weeks of dates, and we're like, okay, I guess it's not that long of a tour. We play the first show, nobody shows up. There's like 10 people. The tour wasn't advertised, it wasn't booked properly, whatever. So it was Obituary, us, and Stillsuit, and there was like, we're playing like halls that hold like 2,000 people, and there's 50 paying people.
Wow.
You can hear people yelling at us in between the songs. And Obituary, look, Kiss Goodbye, we didn't really care that we were on that tour.
Mm-hmm.
Keith was an Obituary fan. The rest of us didn't give a fuck about Obituary.
Right.
And we made that pretty well known to them. Like, this is your tour. This is disaster. You know, they told us not to sell our T-shirts for $10 because it was undercutting them because they weren't making any fucking money.
Wow.
They were telling the sound guys to not turn on the subs on the PA. They wouldn't let us use monitors on the stage.
Wow.
You know, they were just doing real bullshit rock star dick shit like that.
Wow.
And we were like, oh, these guys are fucking assholes.
Wow.
We ended up, and again, this pre-internet, you know, we're just four guys in a van driving from show to show. We missed one of these goddamn shows. We got stuck in traffic in Detroit. It was an early matinee show. We didn't realize it was an early matinee show.
Oh, no.
We showed up at like 7 o'clock, which is pretty typical, like, load-in time. Obituary had already played, and their manager was basically laughing at us like, ha, we thought you guys went back to wherever you came from. Is basically what he said to us.
Wow.
So we show up to the next show in Cleveland, and we set up all our stuff. We do our sound check, and we asked the person running the show, hey, are we going to get like some food or anything? And they said, hold on. We were told you guys weren't playing the show.
Oh.
What do you mean? We're on the tour. And the manager of Obituary came in and said, yeah, you guys aren't on the tour anymore.
Whoa.
And it was like the Agora Ballroom in Cleveland. They said, if you guys want to play anyways, you know, we'll give you like $25 for gas money. And they said, nope. Grabbed all our stuff, loaded it off stage while there was a crowd inside Agora Ballroom.
Yeah.
Out to our van. Someone slashed the tires on our van.
No.
So we had to take care of that out front of this busy club. We got into the van, and we tried to recover, book some shows on the way back. Didn't end up happening the way we would have liked.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So that was after that. Shortly after that, Keith quit the band.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to say that was the reason he quit the band, but you know, if you're having doubts about a music career, that could definitely sway you one way or another.
Oh my God. Crazy town. You know, with Kiss Goodbye again, I saw them do a reunion show. They played the Acheron in Brooklyn, but I don't think were you playing drums on that or no?
No.
Gotcha.
Tim emailed, said, Tom and I want to do some reunion shows. Either you're in or you're not. Let us know. I said, my blessings, go nuts.
Yeah.
There was some weirdness that went around that, but I was happy if they do some shows. I didn't want to be part of that. So yeah. I let them, you know, I gave them my blessing to do what they wanted to do.
Yeah, man. You mentioned Unsane earlier, and I've spoken to Vinny as well as two other New York bands, and Bark Market and Helmet, and the drummers of both of those bands. And I like just asking people, as you know, with that sort of heavy, sort of noise rock thing that I think all three of those bands were doing. So, you know, the Amphetamine Reptile record label and this and that. And were you a fan of those New York bands, I guess? And between, because I mean, I hear so much of what would be post-hardcore, you know, I guess Helmet's first record, Strap It On, coming out in 90. Helmet had a pretty big influence on a whole lot of bands from what I hear in their music, you know?
Yeah, definitely. That was the style that was happening in New York at that time.
Yeah.
You know, Diamonds Christine was definitely influenced by that stuff. I wasn't a huge fan of that genre, but it was part of it, that scene was.
Yeah.
So I really like the Unsane. I think they did that the best of all those bands. You know, Quicksand as well. You know, Helmet. You know, Alan Cage, who was in Quicksand, great drummer. Really enjoyed listening to his drumming.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, you know, those bands, I'd like to say that they're not metal, but they're heavy.
Correct.
Right? So
correct.
That was like the not metal.
Yeah.
Heaviness without metal. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they absolutely did it. And especially with the way Helmet dressed and just looked, they looked like frat guys when they first came out with hats and the whole thing. It was just like the whole package was such a bizarre thing. You hear how heavy it is and then you see them, you're like, oh, that's what's going on. All right. But yeah, I think that's a very important distinction to say that they were heavy without necessarily being metal. But well, I'll just ask you about Shai Hulud. And am I pronouncing that correctly? Shai Hulud?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, it's a fucked up name.
It's a Dune Yeah, it's a Dune reference. Like the sandworm was called Shai Hulud in the Fremen language or something like that.
Gotcha. Well, you ended up playing on one of their records, and at time, with their first record, pretty much kind of, I would say, pretty much straight, pretty hardcore staple. Then I think speaking of incorporating more metal stuff, I mean, there's almost like kind of like tech death metal and more metal stuff happen in particular on the record that I believe you played on. So how did you end up with them, and was that tough, sort of straddling those different styles and playing that stuff?
I first started playing with Shai Hulud was just as a fill-in drummer in 1999. Kiss Goodbye was on Revelation Records, and Shai Hulud was on Revelation Records, or like their one of their like child record labels. And one of the people at Revelation suggested me to do a tour, and I had 1 week to learn the songs and fly to Florida and practice for a couple of days and go on tour with them.
Wow,
the tour was a complete disaster. more because the singer quit right before that tour too. Like they just had like guitar player sang, and then somebody else ended up singing halfway through tour.
Oh my God!
So Shai Hulud always had like a lot of crazy shit going on. Always, even their hardcore stuff always had some crazy things going on. It was never straight songs.
Yes.
Always weird times and weird tempos and things going on.
Sure.
So I did that tour. I didn't really talk to those guys for a while. Like 4 or 5 years later, I read online that they needed a drummer for Europe. And I said, hey guys, if you need a drummer, let me know. I said, oh yeah, sure. It'd be nice to have the same drummer that did the last Europe tour, play with us again. So I don't think that I was ever the right drummer for Shai Hulud. I'm more about just hitting the fucking shit out of my drums as hard as I can. Mm-hmm. And, like I said, they had a lot more weird time signatures going on, and like a lot more precise playing. Because of my relationship with Matt Foss especially, I think that I continued doing some more tours with them. And it got time for them to record their next record, Misanthropy Pure. Mm-hmm. And Matt said, "Hey, we need you. We need to do this record." And it was on Metal Blade Records. And I'm not going to say that they changed the way they wrote songs because they're on Metal Blade Records, but I'm sure because of the bands that they were playing with at that point, just had a different sound. I'm sure that had to have crept into how that record was produced.
Right.
As well.
For sure. Man, I tell you what, I mean, the fact that you were intermittently playing with that band, and from what I can see, one of my buddies as well, that interestingly enough, his band, who I've also played with, opened up for Kiss It Goodbye when they played at the Acheron show that I was telling you about. The guitarist of that band, what up, Josh Lozano of Fashion Week, he also played in Shai Hulud for a second, and he was joking. He was like, man, that band has had like 70 members. And I was like, he's got to be exaggerating. And I looked it up. It's actually been almost 70 members. That's insane. Yeah. That's impressive that you could navigate all that in a band that has had nearly 70 members. That's pretty impressive, man.
Yeah, Matt Fox is a driving force behind that band. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he could keep that band driven and even though he had a lot of different people come and go in the band, he always kept the band like it was always Shai Hulud. Let me put it that way. It was always Shai Hulud. It was never a cover band. It was never It was never a bunch of years up there half-assing it. It was always a full-fledged Shai Hulud band up there, giving it their all and sounding like Shai Hulud every time, every night. And I played with a lot of different people in that band too. And there was, like I said, the first tour I did was kind of they didn't have a singer, and it wasn't really the best. But other tours I did with them, there was always different people coming and going. But it was always great people, and it was always Shai Hulud.
Right.
And some of the best shows I played were with Shai Hulud, just in front of just thousands of people.
Really.
And Matt was so loves playing live and had such great energy, and everybody on that stage wants to have that energy and be a part of that. Yeah.
Speaking of bands that have had 70-ish members, who I also mentioned earlier in Today is the Day, correct me if I'm wrong, but you did play with that band. So tell me a little bit about your experience in playing with that band.
Sure. So right after Kiss It Goodbye broke up, I was kind of just feeling around, trying to see what bands were looking for drummers. And I actually briefly talked to Jamie from Hatebreed on the phone before I talked to Steve Austin. And Jamie basically had one question for me. Do you play double bass? I said, no. He said, okay, thanks, man. And that was the end of that conversation. But I talked right after I talked to Steve, and Steve said, "Yeah, I got a couple shows coming up." And I thought, again, the Unsane keeps on coming up here, but I thought that Today's Day was supposed to tour with the Unsane. And I thought I was getting onto an Unsane tour with Today's the Day.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve said, no, we're not doing that. I just got a couple shows I need a fill-in drummer for. I think like the Coalesce drummer was talking about doing fill-in. But he said, yeah, come on out. I was living in Seattle. He was in Clinton, Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
So he flew me out. It was just me and Steve in his recording studio for about like 5 days. It was just me and him rehearsing, basically locked me in the studio at night and reopened the studio in the morning. And we just jammed, me and him. And I actually like worked on Through the Eyes of God with him too. Like I have a demo of that.
Wow.
Funny thing is, like the drummer before me, there was a demo of him playing too. So Brad Elrod played, then I played, then Braun played it, and made it what it is.
Right.
So I actually have a cassette stowed away somewhere with me playing drums on that. But,
whoa.
But I'll just keep that hidden. So we ended up playing Milwaukee Metal Fest, and this was 1998.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, Steve packed up like his gear and stuff into his like 1978 Cutlass, and like sped across the country to get to Milwaukee. And like we broke down on the side of the road, and we had to repair his car, and there was other things that were going on. And we meet up at that time. There was Chris Reeser was playing keyboard. He was on the Temple of Morning Star record. This was technically end of that whole tour.
Mm-hmm.
So we met up with Chris in Michigan. I believe Chris came from Michigan. So we met up with him, and Chris had a minivan with all of his keyboard gears and amps and everything in there. So I rode with Chris for the rest of the trip to Milwaukee. And as soon as I get in the car, close the door, Chris turns to me and says, "Do not join this band.
Oh, no.
Whatever you do, don't join this band. If you do, you will last 1 year maximum. That's it. Everybody has a different excuse
mm-hmm.
why they leave, but it's always the same reason."
Right.
And I guess, I'm not going to say what that reason is, but
right.
You could probably put two and two together there.
Yeah.
So we drove out to Milwaukee, get into the hotel room. And since we didn't practice with Chris, we just did a quick run through of the set in the hotel room without like any instruments. Steve just played unplugged. Chris plugged in his keyboard and just had like headphones like outward so we could hear it. And I just tapped on like some pillows on the bed. And that was a rehearsal until we got on stage at Milwaukee Metal Fest.
Whoa.
So Relapse had their own stage for this festival in 1998. And so we just got there and started playing. And I didn't even realize that the first song of the set, there's no bass in it. I didn't even know that Chris didn't play a bass line or anything. It was just basically him making noise over the whole song.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was going on for the first song. And after that, everything kind of settled down and it was fine.
Yeah.
But that was definitely a trial by fire. Get up on stage and play a set that was a band I've never played with. Watching Today's the Day from the view of the drummer was incredible. It was so much fun. Watching Steve is such an intense, awesome guy to as a front man. So it was pretty cool. And just to cap off this story, Chris basically took off right after the set. And I think that's the last anybody heard of him. So we had an empty hotel room, and the funny thing was there was this new band that played the Relapse stage called the Dillinger Escape Plan. And I didn't see the set. But everybody was going fucking nuts. My friend Rob Lowy from Black Army Jacket and Dave Whitty, holy shit, they were the best band. You missed them? Oh, too bad.
Yeah.
I was talking to those guys, and the Dillinger Escape Plan guys after they played. They're from New Jersey, and even though I was living in Seattle, I wanted to go back to New Jersey and visit my folks. So I'm like, hey, you guys are going back to New Jersey. I'll trade you a hotel room, Chris's hotel room, for a ride back to New Jersey.
No way.
So I ended up riding back from Milwaukee to New Jersey with Dillinger Escape Plan.
No way.
Like they dropped me off with Ben at his house, and Ben says, "Oh, I love Kiss It Goodbye. There's this drum beat and Ammunition. You got to teach me the drum beat to Ammunition." So we went up to his bedroom after this long drive from Milwaukee, and I showed him how to play Ammunition on drums. And
Come on.
He goes, "Okay, here, check this out. I'm gonna put in a cassette for you. This is my band, the Dillinger Escape Plan." And he played Under the Running Board for me, like what they were working on at the time. And I'm like, "Oh shit, you guys, I thought they were just a bunch of knucklehead hardcore kids, right?
Right.
I'm like, oh, you guys aren't just like typical hardcore kids. He goes, no, we're not. Okay, good.
Wow. Yeah, you heard the tornado force that was Chris Penny on drums, also obviously from New Jersey. So yeah, I witnessed that band live back in the day, and it absolutely blew my mind. It was completely ridiculous. Oh my God.
Yeah, basically they were getting shown to the world, like, hey, this is the Relapse stage. Here is our new band, the Dillinger Escape Plan, and I missed out, even though I was right there.
Nice. Well, with all these bands that we've talked about, from that I think are heirs to some of the noise rock stuff and whatnot, I think one of the more outliers bands, in my opinion, is the Jesus Lizard. I'm just curious as to what your experience is, or was with them and hearing them. You know, I mean, I know Goat came out in '91. I was especially a fan of Liar, the record that came out afterwards, and I kind of went backwards. But man, to this day, I mean, I was just listening to them on vinyl earlier, and that band is just one of a kind. And I feel as though David Yao is kind of my spirit animal. Read into that how which you will. But tell me what you think about the Jesus Lizard.
Yeah, you know, it's funny that you mentioned Goat. That right there was like the soundtrack for like our 11 and a half week tour that we did. Rorschach did with Born Against.
Wow.
That was like constantly in our cassette player in our van.
Amazing.
And that was one of those bands where it's like they're heavy, but they're not metal. Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that really impressed me the most about that record was the bass playing. Like this
totally.
Really aggressive bass playing. You know, it's just that was very, very new. Like this, and I think I drove a lot of the influence of the bands that I was in, from Rorschach and on, even to like Playing Enemy and on, like that bass sound, that yes. distorted but not fuzzy bass sound, that aggressive attack on that bass.
100%.
As a matter of fact, I'm going to admit this right now. When we did the bass tracking for the Rorschach Protestant record, we gave him that record, Jesus Lizard Goat, and said, we want to sound like that. Like,
nice. Fuck yeah, you did. Of course you did. Shit sounds incredible.
So, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of that sound in that bass when you listen back to that record. But you know, that's what we asked the engineer for, and I think what the engineer ended up doing was he mixed together like a clean and distorted sound with an attempt to try to get that sound. That was the sound we would have loved to have on that record, and I think on Kiss Goodbye, I think we got a lot closer to that sound as well.
I'd agree. Man, that's wild. Well, in talking about some of these bands that we've gone through thus far that you've been with, what did you think about the sort of post-hardcore, whatever, you know, metalcore, whatever you want to call it, scene that started happening, you know, in the around '99 with everyone from, you know, like Botch and Dillinger and Converge and this and that and the other, Burnt by the Sun, Coalesce, all that good stuff. What did you make of those bands? And because a lot of them would reference ultimately some of the bands that you had been in, and Dead Guy with the connection with Kiss It Goodbye. What did you think about that scene?
Oh yeah, that was awesome. I mean, I was playing Enemy at that time. You know, we started off around 99 and, you know, 2000, 2001. Yeah. And we toured with Converge on their Jane Doe record.
Wow.
You know, they just put out, and I don't think, when we started that tour, I don't think they realized what they put out when they put out Jane Doe.
Right.
When we started that tour, yeah, they were still like, you know, I think one of the first couple of shows, they played like a half an hour.
Yeah.
Like, dude, get back up on stage and play fucking longer. There's hundreds of people here like going nuts, and you know, I don't think they were used to it. They weren't ready for that, and you know, that was that. You know, as that tour went on, like I think they realized, yeah, we got something here. You know, this. So it was amazing, you know, just to witness that.
Yeah.
And also, yeah, I mean, Playing Enemy, you know, we got to play a lot of like festivals and a lot of shows with a lot of these bands too. So
yeah,
it was awesome. You know, Dillinger and Converge, Coalesce, yeah, Burnt by the Sun.
Yep.
It was awesome. It was great. We got to play a show right around that time. It was like Mastodon, Burnt by the Sun, Playing Enemy, and another band, Anodyne. It was great.
Awesome. If you're in Seattle at that time, one of the bands that I had mentioned earlier in Botch, were you able to see them live? or play with them or go to the shows or just see the wrecking force that was that band?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, of course. You know, Playing Enemy was playing shows with them all the time.
Wow.
And, you know, it's funny, before Playing Enemy got together, Damien, the singer guitar player of Playing Enemy, was in a band called 9 Iron Spitfire and did a tour, like they toured with Botch. And, you know, I didn't really make that connection, you know, but now that you mention it, 9 Iron Spitfire touring with Botch and then me playing with Damien and you know, just us playing these shows with Botch. If there wasn't a conscious influence, you know, it was definitely there. It was definitely part of it, you know, and watching Dave, you know, just like thrash his guitar and smash it into his face and bleed all over his equipment, you know, just like that intensity and just they commanded their audience. It was crazy.
Awesome. My God.
We played some festivals and you know, to see our Seattle friends out there just, you know, raging was great. It was a great feeling to see for them, you know, to rage like that.
Absolutely.
And again, I mean, we got to play the final Botch show.
Oh, nice.
Which was a big honor. It was. I wasn't particularly happy with the Playing Enemy part of that set, but Botch was just, you know, they played the Showbox in Seattle, a sold out show. They brought us up for the very last end of the song. I brought up my drums on the side of the stage. We all came up, everybody, and we played the end of the set with them all together, as just smashing everything and just to finish out the Botch career.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible, man. Well, amidst all this, you know, I'm realizing I didn't even really ask you, but how'd you end up getting into the drums anyway? And did you study at all, or were you in school band, or was it trial by fire and get in a band and play shows and tour, and that's how you got into it?
Drums was, you know, listening to AC/DC and Ozzy and then fucking Rush. By the way, we should have known that 2020 was just going to be the biggest disaster in history when Neil Peart died in the beginning of this year.
I know, man.
I mean, I'm almost in tears just talking about that we lost him this year.
Yeah.
But hearing Tom Sawyer, my God, if I hear Tom Sawyer today, to me, there's not a better drum song. But hearing those drums, that was it. You know, it's a calling, right? They say that's your calling. It calls me.
Wow.
I did take some lessons, you know, some beginner lessons, but it was just listening to those, you know, Judas Priest and Ozzy and Rush records and playing along with them.
Right.
You know, it was, if you remember the TV show Freaks and Geeks, there's a scene where Jason is playing along to Sphere of Radio in his basement. He puts in like dry ice and turns on the strobe lights and puts on his headphones and his cobbled together drum set. That was 100% me, trying to play like Neil Peart and not. You know, in my mind, I was just like it, but
right. It's really interesting. You know, I mean, I think at certain generations, there was this sort of iconic drummer that led so many drummers to just take up the drums in the first place. And I think clearly at a certain age, Ringo Starr 100% did that. It's incredible how many people reference him. Yeah. But again, once you talk to people in the next generation, it's undeniable Neil Peart, what he did and just how many people he influenced to take up the kit. It's incredible, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Once I started like playing in bands, that was it for me, right? Like I was a band drummer, you know, I wasn't a studio drummer or a session drummer. I was a band drummer.
Yeah.
Playing and writing songs, you know, just that creativity that went along with that. That's what kept me going. That's what I love to do.
Yeah. Well, man, I mean, you mentioned that you've had a job this time and been able to work from home and whatnot. Was it a bizarre transition from being so immersed in music and having that be the focal point of your life and touring and doing all that, and then being like, all right, now it's time for real life shit, family, everything, right?
No. I was ready. I was definitely ready. You know. Yeah. So back to Shai Hulud. I recorded Misanthropy Pure. I learned during the recording sessions that my wife was pregnant with my daughter. And I was very happy to be like, that's it, guys. I'm done.
Yeah.
Shai was like, are we going to tour? We're going to tour this record? I said, no, I'm not. Sorry, I'm done. I got everything out of drumming that I wanted to get out of drumming.
Yeah.
Doing Misanthropy Pure, I felt like I left on a high note. I loved being a part of the writing of that record. You know, if that was the last thing I played on, then I was happy with that. touring. It got to the point where touring. My favorite days on tour were the days that we didn't play shows, and that was a pretty good sign that maybe I shouldn't be a touring drummer anymore. But I did it for I don't know, like 20 years or so, close to 20 years. I felt like I got everything out of it. To keep it going, it takes a lot of work.
Totally.
To live that life, it takes a lot of work, a lot of dedication.
Yep.
And I felt that I put the amount of time and effort and work I put in. I was happy with what I did, but I didn't feel like it was going to go any farther than that. So
yeah.
I was very happy to just do music as a side thing and play with people like I mentioned earlier, the Space Bag was just like some like instrumental prog grind band. I'm just happy to play those records.
Totally. Well, what do your kids think about your music? Yeah, exactly.
Daddy, turn it down.
Oh my God, man! My oldest son is 2.5 years old, so he loves rock and roll. He loves rocking out for now. He throws his hands up in the air and loves to say the words rock and roll. So he likes all that for now. But obviously, by the time he becomes a teenager, we'll see if he just absolutely hates everything that it is that I listen to. So that remains to be seen.
Yeah, I feel that even though they get embarrassed, Daddy's listening to his crazy, noisy, heavy metal. I want to believe that it gets in their brain and influences them somehow in a positive way.
Yeah.
That somewhere in their life it'll make a positive difference that they heard this music.
Totally.
I will go down believing that's true.
I'm with you, dude. I'm absolutely 100% with you there. Right on. Well, man, Andrew, it was really good talking to you. Thanks again for hanging. It's fun to pick your brain about the chronology of all these bands and revisiting all the nostalgic, the ups, the downs, the ridiculous shows, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. It's kind of like a time machine today. Yeah.
Totally. Right on, Andrew. Thanks again, man. At some point, we'll have to meet in person and hang in there, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks to Andrew for hanging. I'll keep trying to crank these out every Monday. You know the deal. We'll catch you on the next one. Crash, bang, boom!